Alright. Everyone! Time for the Get to the Point review.
Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to the Get to the Point review podcast. I am your co-host Kelly McKinney of Hohenheim Productions.
And I'm Josh Gibson of Fourth Wall Players.
And this week we are examining overall cancel culture as well as Borat Subsequent Moviefilm. Because they somewhat relate. We had some basically attempts at cancel culture after the film was released, as well as the content of the film also kind of fed into that whole release. Culture. And you forgot about the cancel culture
I did.
part.
I was so concerned with trying to figure out how to watch Borat.
Oh no. Okay, well.
I can talk about cancel culture forever. I don't need to write anything down.
Okay, well, I'll go with what I had written down.
Okay, sure, yeah.
All right, so I said basically with examining cancel culture that it's, in my mind, just viewing it, it's the same cowardly mob mentality, much like the lynch mobs in the South during abolitionism.
Right.
Like that's all it's so close-minded. It doesn't encourage a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we're also I feel like we are basically cancel culture is an attempt to, it's like a straw man fallacy. Essentially, we're taking a look at one aspect of a person's life and saying that anything they've ever done isn't worth a damn, and that they're not a legitimate person for what they've done.
Right.
And it's just it's ridiculous. So,
Sorry. I as far as like the using a certain indicator for like this person did this one thing, so whatever. There are certain things I agree with. I don't think you should like go and burn all of your Harry Potter books because of J.K. Rowling. I do think stop following her on Twitter if you're really upset with her. Stop giving her a platform to speak out if you're really upset with her.
Right.
You know, I get it. Like I get how trans people can in the LGBTQ community can be upset with her. Yep. I get all that.
Yep.
But it's kind of like So Kevin Spacey did got exposed for the things he did in the past, and he got fired from his movie. Fair enough. But everybody else not only fair enough, but that's what should have happened. But everybody else that worked on that film had nothing. Well,
now suffers from it.
Yeah, they now suffer from it. Some of them you could argue had something to do with it. Whatever. I'm sure the gaffer had nothing to do with it. But
right.
So all those people who we don't even think about when we watch movies, like they all still need to make money. They all still need to do things. It's not fair to cancel, whatever, so that they don't make anything.
Right, but we also are thinking of this in terms of the way we think of our 9-to-5 jobs, where when you get quit, they have union laws to protect
I get it.
them,
Yeah,
sort of
I get that they can, when they can take up other stuff.
Yeah, when the gaffer loses his job on one show because that job was canceled, he's not out of movies to film in LA.
No, I get all that.
But yes,
I'm just saying
I know what you mean.
that's the point
talent,
I'm making.
The talent, however, until they're cast in something else, don't have something to fall back on.
Exactly.
So it's much easier for the technical side to continue to work after.
So including whatever. Including whatever actor or actress that has been abused by Kevin Spacey. Now they have to suffer because of what they went through.
Right.
I get it's an open-ended dialogue, fine.
For sure.
My problem with cancel culture is I think it's not a real thing. I think it's all brought up, and yes, there are certain instances, we just mentioned a couple, where people get canceled for doing awful things.
Yes.
But a lot of anti-liberal sentiment is trying to paint liberals as like foaming from the mouth crazy, canceling everything for the slightest mishap. But none of these things get canceled. Yes. Jace is still on Paw Patrol. I mean, he's safe.
Jace is still on Paw Patrol.
He did not. And they talked about canceling all these shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Joe Rogan still has millions of listeners.
Yeah, Joe Rogan has a lot of listeners. So this whole idea of like every time, this person, like Gina Carano's going to get canceled because of things she said. No, she still has a job on The Mandalorian.
And this is where I don't. This is what my main problem with the whole cancel culture is that only those with the resources to survive it.
Right.
Okay, because for instance, if you and I were canceled, we have a platform, but no audience in which that pays attention enough.
Right.
Whereas we have such a scandalous news network and everything system, across our nation, that cancel culture against the right people. If you don't have the publicist and the resources money-wise to survive cancel culture, then you are an actual victim of cancel culture.
Right.
So, like, those are the only instances where it works. Like, for instance, Nick Cannon didn't get canceled with the whole thing. You know what I mean? That was my sort of example there.
Right.
And then I said that it's, a reflection of how America has just always been. But we now have a virtual megaphone and sensational news system to perpetuate the hate.
Right.
Because I think of when Hitler came to power, 90% of basically Americans supported him up until we got involved in the war.
Because we didn't know. All we got was propaganda.
Right. And
Yeah.
not only because all we got was propaganda, but when you take a look at what Hitler stood for, we were in the middle of, we were still basically, we're 20 years before the civil rights movement.
That's true, yeah.
So there's still so much racism and hate underlying in the system.
A lot of white
supremacy, right?
Yeah.
And so you take a look at these.
Supremacy, you're right.
Yeah, you
I
take a
was
look at
too
these white supremacists. Okay, if they're saying if Hitler is getting rid of the Jews and they still share a similar skin color, what do you think he's going to do for America? It just fuels their rages, their racism boner.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's literally no different than we were 70 years ago. We just have a megaphone for it.
Right.
That's
yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, definitely. Oh, also, I would like to say, trying to be more outraged over somebody losing a job than you are over the fact that they sexually assaulted somebody else. That is the problem I have with cancel culture. Because almost every single instance I can think of that actually led to somebody being canceled, minus, like, I guess Roseanne Barr, is something like the Me Too movement stuff, right?
Yeah.
They were all canceled because they were all sexual assaulters.
Right.
I don't care that they lost their jobs.
Right.
Sorry, I don't.
No.
They abused their power.
They lost their jobs.
As powerful white men, for the most part, and they lost their jobs.
Yeah, it's close to justice as we actually are.
Right. Yeah. They got fired.
Right.
That's
exactly.
not cancel culture.
Right. And we've what we've have here is basically an expose on natural consequences.
Right.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Right. It's what it is, and we call it cancel culture. No, cancel culture is trying to cancel Bill Gates because he supports vaccines. Look, he's been
right.
He has more money in humanitarian efforts than most of us do in our whole lives.
Exactly, like he is his middle name's philanthropy, right?
Right, exactly. So I mean, to turn it into a conspiracy seems a little much for me.
Yeah.
But as you can
moving
tell,
on.
if not for those who are viewing it in video format, this is our political episode. What with the inauguration going on,
might go a little long.
So it may, but because of that, feeding right into cancel culture is Borat Subsequent Moviefilm.
Awesome.
Right, which we have our Get to the Point reviews on. And Josh, would you like to give your Get to the Point review on Borat Subsequent Moviefilm first?
Yeah. I said, touching story about how a father and daughter overcome their country's antiquated social beliefs to grow closer together. Oh, also they happen to give us a glimpse into the pure insanity that American culture is mired in. The black woman may have been the only sensible person they met. That's accurate.
And that is very accurate. Interesting. And it was something very similar. I put, undercover political satire has never been so relevant, so strong, and so true. Borat 2 is holding up a mirror to our vagine. But the final...
I did use that word a lot.
Yeah, but the final prank falls flat. And that was
does, yeah. Especially since that's the one they made all the big fuss about.
Yes, because so many other parts of that movie. I mean, for the simple fact that, the whole culture that they have in the film from Kazakhstan, the made-up culture on basically the restrictions on females, on women.
Yeah.
Because of, he's holding up a mirror to, this is how unequal we still actually are.
Right.
In America.
Because, no one but the black woman was, outraged when they heard this.
Yeah. And
most of them are like, well, that's a little weird, but okay.
Yeah, they're like, oh, yeah, well, I think of the QAnon, yes. They actually, exactly. They actually sold him a cage, and no one called the police?
Right. That to me was stood out more to me than the political stuff was, These people in these retail service industries who have just been beaten to their head that give the customer whatever they want, just try to get that sale or whatever. These people obviously were like, this guy's crazy, but they didn't mind taking advantage of it and being like, oh, well, he just bought $1,400 worth of stuff, so I guess he could put his daughter in a cage. Like, they didn't care.
Right.
And that to me was, it was insane.
And that treatment of women from
Yeah.
Borat's perspective continued throughout the film, and
Yeah.
even the daughter's beliefs perpetuated it in
Yeah.
every instance that she interacted
Right.
with someone.
Right.
It was just as bad. And so, as usual with our Get to the Point review, we also, as well as reviewing our recent movie, we take a look at a review of that recent movie. And there were plenty of reviews that were basically shining reviews. So I tried to pick one that will most likely have an opposing viewpoint of ours. And this was as close as it would get to a negative review on the movie. A review by Davika Girish of the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
And my Get to the Point review on the review itself is that I both agree and disagree. It's not elegant, okay? It's not elegant like the first film. That's true. So she's correct there. But every moment of this film matches, in my opinion, and tops the first social experiment in that how true it is. Like, yes, he's very blatantly getting people to admit basically how stupid they are.
Basically exposing us for
how
our
we
hypocrisy,
are.
right?
And it may not have been elegant, but it's still... The point is, we would not have this footage, essentially, had he not went undercover to show it to us.
Right.
And the thing is that what's even funnier to me about it is that we all know how America is, but we ignore it. So, because I guess my mind goes to our own selfish pursuit of happiness in our own lives that allows us to ignore.
We're more
all of these things
concerned
we know.
with and personal freedoms is an important thing, but just as a whole, as a country, we are more concerned with letting this person do what they're doing because that's their right. Right.
Yes.
As opposed to being like, is it right?
Well, not only that, but I mean, you take a look at, for instance, we're more concerned with it's insane to me that when we worry about our personal freedoms, for the simple fact that Borat, essentially a foreigner, just bought a cage for his daughter.
Yeah.
Is that not freedom?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Like, seriously, no one stopped you from.
To us, it's more about the appearance of equality and tolerance than it is actually being tolerant. Like, it is worse to be called racist in this country than it is to actually be a racist.
Right.
As far as how we react.
Right.
And that is something that, I feel we all struggle with on a certain point. At a certain, I came from a small town, so, I did not think of myself as having any sort of racist tendencies because I didn't know any better.
Right.
Going to a bigger city and kind of seeing how more minorities lived, I'm still not, part of a, the Black Panthers or anything, but, I'm a little bit more, I'm a little bit more understandable, and I'm not, because I used to be the guy that was like, well, if they don't want to get shot, they should just listen to directions. And now I hear that, and I'm like, that's ignorant as hell.
That's ignorant as hell.
But that's what I grew up in, the culture I grew up in.
Of them following directions.
It's not even just that. It's just getting to know, getting to know different, minorities.
But they literally have to be doing nothing wrong to be
right. Yeah, they could just be
assaulted.
They're literally just driving, and they get pulled over, and
potentially assaulted.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, take that as you will, and cancel me or whatever, I guess. But I feel like we need to get to a point where we can start admitting that because of how we were brought up or because of the culture we were raised in or whatever, sometimes when we're 17, we don't know everything.
I grew up believing that it made you a better man to be able to admit you were wrong.
Right.
So,
except nobody does that.
Yeah, right. I mean, so but to be able to look and say,
I agree, yeah.
I had a closed-minded point of view because I grew up in a small town where
True.
I didn't see the thing is we both grew up in the same town, but in different neighborhoods.
Right.
So
Mine was more like the meth cooking capital of the
right,
world,
exactly. Yeah, right. Welcome to the North End.
I mean, I had shootings, but they were just redneck shootings.
But it was just redneck, right? It was people shooting beer cans in their backyard with shotguns. Yeah, not people shooting other people.
Or dogs, possibly.
Right, and just you 2 miles away, closer to downtown. I'm
a
the
really small
only
city.
white, yeah, 2 miles away in downtown. I'm the only white boy in a
your
black
neighborhood.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm seeing this stuff from day one. No
Right.
one liked the cops. No one talked to the cops. But yeah, so I disagree with how powerful the second movie actually is. With her opinion on how powerful the second movie actually is.
Okay,
Because
yeah.
she doesn't necessarily say that it's a bad movie. She just
No, she seems a little disgusted by it from her tone.
yes,
But
but
I would imagine that's because of most of the sexist
stuff, yeah,
stuff
for
in
sure,
it, yeah.
for sure. Okay, and your review over the review?
My review was she points to the obvious ploy of trying to expose the backward thinking of certain political viewpoints, and she treats it like it's a bad thing, but that was the point of the movie.
Right, that was
so,
the point.
That's my get to the point review.
Yeah, right, like-
I don't know what else to say. Like, yeah, there was some crude humor in it, and there was a lot of, sexism and whatnot, but he did that to get the point across.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, out of the different characters that Sacha Baron Cohen has created over the years, we've already get that Borat is supposed to be the more crude out of
Right, that's
most
like
of
the
them.
point, right?
Yeah. And I mean, they're kind of all crude, but they're supposed to be mocking something. Like Borat is basically how he's showing America what we think of foreigners.
Yeah,
from
right,
from
exactly.
small countries
Yeah.
in Russia / the Middle East. Like, so yeah, it's even that is intentional.
Yeah, it's all intentional. Yeah.
All right, and so for basically the bulk of this episode, we're moving into our 5 favorite political movies each, and in no particular order. And I figure since we finished with Borat being Sacha Baron Cohen, we'll go right back into Borat, and I'll start off our top 10 list with Ali G in the House from 2002. One of my favorite political movies of all time. A lot of people may not consider this fully a political movie just because they only think of it as comedy first. But my review over the movie is Tywin Lannister and Albus Dumbledore conspire to bring Trump to office in America's formal introduction to Sacha Baron Cohen. And Sacha Baron Cohen had years and years in the UK doing small TV shows, sketch comedy, etc. Created the Ali G character, and when I first was introduced to him was with this movie Ali G in the House. And
Yeah. He had like a TV show in the 90s about that, right? Or something.
He
like
did,
it was,
yes. Yeah, it was the Ali G show. As well as a number of like pseudo documentaries where as the Ali G character he's teaching people about England and stuff like that. Particularly in it, loved in it.
He was like the R-rated Mr. Bean.
Yeah, exactly. So Ali G is definitely one of my favorite ones because it's about a British gangster, thug, being brought into politics and brought into the House of Parliament, and it creates a storm of a bunch of ridiculousness. It's definitely ridiculous. Yeah. But it was just enough. It was so Americanized and Hollywoodized that you have to take a look at his stuff from England to really get a feel for where the Ali G character comes from. But definitely one of my favorite movies for politicals.
Okay. I didn't really go. I just went with 5 movies. I couldn't really decide my favorites. One of them is like probably my favorite movie of all the time. But that would be Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Okay, that's an old one, right? What's
Yeah,
the year on that?
1939.
1939. All right.
Same year as Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
And Gone with the Wind. That was a really good year for movies.
That was a great year for movies, wasn't it?
But anyway, so just to like pre-warn you, I was feeling a certain type of way after watching the Borat movie, so some of these are a little skewed as far as opinions. But anyway, alright, so Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Alright. Factual story based on Bernie Sanders' first year in Congress, seeing and fighting the blatant corruption by elected officials. Seriously though, this movie is still eerily accurate 80 years later.
It's surprising to me how many of the political movies we're going to go over
are still accurate.
Yeah. It just like we said with cancel culture, nothing's changed.
But it's funny to bring up Mr. Smith Goes to Washington because the famous part of it is when he filibusters for like 72 hours, whatever the hell it is. He goes on forever.
Right.
And right now that's like a big thing right now. Like
that the Senate
Democrats
keeps
are trying to
doing.
get rid of and
the filibuster. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and when we decided we were going to take on this topic for the episode, I realized how sorely underversed I was in political movies.
Yeah.
So I had to go and watch, and that was one that
these are all ones I own too, which is another thing.
I didn't, and I have not seen that movie. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Watch it. It's only like an hour and 27 minutes too.
Wow, it's a short one.
Old movies are like that.
See, and I expect them to be long.
Well, minus Gone with the Wind, which is like 23 days or something.
Right, it's ridiculously long. Okay, next, going right back into how relevant they are, 1997's Wag the Dog.
Yeah. I consider that one, but no, I didn't go with it.
Yeah, well, and see, when I realized, I have 6 here, and I scratched one out.
Yeah.
Because, when I realized, I was like, oh yeah, there are a lot of good political movies, and there's plenty that didn't make my list that I still love, too.
Yeah.
But no movie more supports my stance that politics is purely entertainment than Wag the Dog, a chilling portrayal of our government at work, reminding you that the news is a distraction to the true corruption of our nation.
Yep.
And that really sums it up. There's some funny moments in the movie, but overall, what you're watching is how we can basically imagine our news networks at work all the time, trying to figure out how to get ratings, because that's what it's about.
It's about making the money.
And meanwhile, even talking about how relevant this is today, what's getting pushed under the rug is the president assaulting a 15-year-old girl.
Not just
sexually assaulting
people, but
sexually assaulting a young girl. So, with the Hollywood scandal that's going on with the Epstein,
his daughter.
Yeah, right. It's like the whole Epstein thing, and with the fact that Donald Trump has had how many allegations that are just swept under the rug no one wants to talk about?
I heard on that subject, Kellyanne Conway, I guess, I was listening, she apparently shared nude pictures of her teenage daughter on Twitter.
Good Lord.
Recently. And it's like, well, how are we not save the children with that?
Right. Like,
that is,
how are people not up in arms
that
about
is still
that?
That is still, because she's a Republican.
Right, and that's supposed to be okay with Republicans, I guess.
Yeah, but we're selling children as refrigerators or something. That's
right. Your next movie?
All right, my next movie is Man of the Year. Stand-up comedian unironically runs for president, only to realize constituents liked him cracking jokes more than debating policy. Spoiler: he wins.
Yeah, and the Man of the Year. That one was a tough one for me because there's
his
other
slightly prophetic, but
there's other movies that are so much like it to me too.
Yeah,
that it was like with
I was
with
just
Man
looking
of
at the
the
ones
Year,
I owned.
I feel like it's a direct they pulled directly from Reagan, except for the fact that he wasn't a comedian. He wasn't the same comedian, but that's to me what I see is what won him the election is how charismatic he was during the debates.
Also the actual, this is a case of election fraud because the voting machines were broken.
Yeah. Yes.
So, but they caught it and reversed it. So there's your proof. Anyway.
Number 3 on my list, going right into again relevance here, is Starship Troopers from 1997.
Totally relevant. I saw that and I was like, why did I not think of that one?
Think of that
I was going very presidential, I was just going straight and narrow.
I have very few presidential ones.
All of my stuff is literally political party based.
The only one that I had about a president got marked out in my list.
I kind of figured you would go a little bit more because of what you talked about last time. I figured you'd be a little more like the ones that alluded to politics, but weren't necessarily based
movies.
on politics. So I was like, I'll go with the political. Anyway.
And so my review on Starship Troopers 1997 would be an exciting mock of patriotism, fascism, propaganda, and an action movie that aged very, very well. When I see this movie...
Probably better now than it was when it came out.
Well, the action still holds up in it. It's still incredibly exciting to watch. You don't see anything.
Pumped.
Yes, you still watch it and get pumped. There's not one scene of action in the movie that you see and you go, even the CGI, because they're aliens.
Yeah,
the fact that they're slick and kind of glistening. Yeah, it doesn't... because one thing is that they got the shadows on the movements right. With the CGI, we don't see any slippage.
And almost all of it's done in dark environments, which makes it a little.
Which makes it a lot easier, right? Of course, the Alien movies use practical effects, but everything's slick. It's in the dark. It looks really good. The action just gosh, I still love that
gonna
movie.
go watch it tonight.
I'm gonna watch it with my boys tonight, just so they can see the horror.
We did not understand how that movie was gonna be.
No,
I was like 9 or 10 when I went to go see it with my dad.
I know. I hadn't seen it until
that was
two or 3 years after it came out. I was like 11.
No, we went to theaters. That was awkward.
Oh boy.
Anyway,
I to this day I always forget about the sex in it, and then when
right.
you said, "Oh, that was awkward," and I pictured breasts, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right." There's a lot of naked scenes in that, isn't there?
A lot.
I guess I'll have to cover the boys' eyes during those scenes.
Skip. All right. So my next one was V for Vendetta.
Oh
yeah! Oh, I got you.
Yeah, you got me. Oh, you got me on that one. Damn you!
A glimpse into an alternate reality where the Germans win World War II. A modern GOP in America are incidentally holding high positions in the fascist dystopian future. Go figure.
Go figure. Yeah. Oh, who would have thought of that? Right?
Yeah.
Damn. So just like you were upset about me getting Starship Troopers, I'm just upset about V for Vendetta, because V for Vendetta and like The Matrix.
Yeah.
But both of those are like they're monumental movies as far as the zeitgeist of past 2000. You know, like 1990s plus. Ever since technology was readily available to Americans.
Let's just say from like 2000 through 2012. Hugo Weaving just made gold.
He really did. He
doesn't anymore. He kind of got out of that, but he did for a while.
He decided that
he had a good decade plus.
He decided that the money is good in Marvel. Is what he decided.
Well, actually, he hated his role so much he wouldn't continue it.
He's Red Skull though.
Not in the newer ones, just in the Captain America.
Really?
Yeah.
So we've got
Ross Marquand
is doing his best
Walking
Hugo
Dead.
Weaving.
Yeah, he's Red Skull, and then
Ross Marquand. Who does he play in Walking Dead?
Oh God, the gay guy that led them to Alexandria. Aaron, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's doing an excellent Hugo Weaving impression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very good. Yeah,
it's very convincing. I couldn't tell the difference. I didn't even bother looking at the credits.
Yeah,
I just assumed it was
Hugo Weaving did not like the process of making that film, and so he was like, "I'm not doing any more comic book movies."
And I wonder if it's the CGI. Yeah, I was going to say the makeup, or if it's the green screen action.
Well, that can't be.
Some people get sick.
Well, I guess Lord of the Rings is all practical, but
yes.
I mean, but he was in Lord of the Rings. Matrix had to have green screen, right?
But at the time, that was revolutionary.
Wolfman?
At the time, Matrix was revolutionary filmmaking.
Fair enough. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. So number 4 on my list is In the Loop, 2009. And I realized that this could be a little-known movie for a lot of people.
Yeah,
it's because it's basically British comedy.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, an accurate portrayal of language usage in Britain with office-style camera work. An hour and 40 minutes of brilliant insults. And that's pretty much what it is. It is pretty much every actor in Britain acting, as well as quite a few famous Americans, in a political movie where they're all just insulting each other the whole time. It's very, very funny. I laughed out loud heartily many, many times.
It's been too long since I've seen it. I was about to say I should have done W.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Forgot about that.
Well, and then there's
just in the past, many.
In the past 5 years, there's even been a lot. I mean, past 8 years.
Yeah.
From Lincoln.
Yeah.
To the one that where Christian Bale played Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
I
never watched that.
No, I haven't. I want to though.
Oh, I should have. We also have Darkest Hour. God, that was a good movie.
There's also The Interview.
Yeah, I never watched that one.
Which is a political. It's still a political movie. Election from like 1990 with Matthew Broderick. I refuse
to watch that one. No, I'm just kidding. I don't refuse. I just haven't seen it. Yeah, Matthew Broderick. Yeah,
it's a good one.
All right. Anyway, so my number 4 is Nixon, starring Anthony Hopkins.
Oh, okay.
So I swear, this movie about underhanded dealings, backstabbings, and throwing his inner circle under the bus is not about Donald Trump's last day in office. That's all I got.
Nice. There you go. That's all I got on that one.
No, but seriously, I watched it for the first time 2 years ago, maybe, because I got like a 4-pack of political dramas, and I just happened to watch it. And I was really surprised, and I've read more about Nixon since, so I know a little bit more about exactly kind of what happened.
Right.
But I was really surprised with the way the movie was filmed, like, it was in the 90s when it was made, and how similar the Watergate scandal and whatnot seemed to be to, like, how Trump, like, every week he would fire somebody else in his not every week, but it seemed like every week somebody else was being fired from his inner circle in the White House.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And it was kind of the same thing. Like, in the beginning, he's like, Nixon has like 6 or 7 different like advisors around him. By the end, they're like all gone.
Right.
And it's just him, and he gets busted or whatever. So it was a very well done movie. But yeah, I was the comparison between how they showed things in that movie to, because I think at the time Trump was under the it was when the Mueller investigation was going on. Was when I watched
gotcha.
it.
Uh-huh.
So it was so. It's so crazy watching it that time, and I was like, Jesus, all this stuff is happening right now.
Again, amazing how accurate and
it
relevant
is. Yeah.
every political movie is today. And it just goes
especially
back
ones
to,
about Nixon.
Well, and it just goes back to how nothing has changed. Nothing has changed in this country. Really, nothing has changed. Okay, my last one on the list. I now, as you can tell, we've listed 1.5 million different political movies that could have made the list.
Right.
But I like to think out of the side of the box on this one. So I put Star Trek, The Next Generation, and DS9.
Okay.
And I'm sort of examining them as one, right?
Right.
And so for Star Trek, this review is primarily over The Next Generation. It's just that a lot of the great diplomatic and
carries over to Deep Space Nine because that's kind of what they do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So for Star Trek, The Next Generation, Hollywood geekdom decides there isn't nearly enough talks about android sentient life, alien peace treaties, and futuristic communism. I want a series about it. Make it so. That's my best Patrick Stewart. And yeah, so that's
Sorry,
what we've
Sir
got.
Patrick.
sorry, Sir Patrick Stewart. I tried my
If
best.
you're listening to this
if you're
podcast.
listening, I tried to make it so. And so that's basically wraps up my list because I love Star Trek: The Next Generation, and despite the cheesy
Deep
makeup,
Space Nine's like my favorite Star Trek.
it
show,
is
I
my
think.
favorite. That's why there's a Gul Dukat hanging up behind you on the wall.
No, that makes sense.
And not
That
someone
makes sense.
from The Next
Who doesn't
Generation.
love Odo?
I love Gul Dukat.
Well, yeah, he's cool too. I love Odo. I've literally seen Rene Auberjonois in like 1,000 things, but
Yeah, he's
I
amazing.
always think of him as
Odo. Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is that after you've seen him in Odo, then when you go and see him and everything else, he reminds you of Odo, but he's still great in everything that he does.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
uniquely.
Like you don't get distracted.
Yep.
Anyway, okay. So my last one is All the King's Men. Another example. This is one with Sean Penn. Another example of a thug politician blackmailing and threatening his way into office before his own partners have him killed for his tyrannical tendencies. Again, just
I didn't see All the King's Men, but I did.
spoiler alert.
I expected to see what is it? All the President's Men.
I almost put it on there, but I was like, I'm
That's
gonna save that for when we do a journalism one.
And that's Robert Redford and Dustin
Literally,
Hoffman, right?
it was like the last one I cut from my list because I was like, I really wanted to do it.
Oh, a
but
journalism
I already,
one. That would be so fun.
Right, but I already had a Nixon one on there because I also had Frost Nixon was another possibility. But I already had a Nixon movie. I didn't want like 4 of my friggin' options to be about Nixon.
To be out Nixon, give the wrong impression that he's your
right.
favorite president.
Yeah, he's really not. I am like
He's really not.
I am like wow. Like I was reading a book called like The President's Club, talking about how like former presidents. It's not like an official clubhouse or anything, but they're still on call to current presidents should they desire. I mean, Trump didn't stick with this, but they're still on call with former presidents. So like if something like really major historically happens, they can go back to previous leaders and be like, okay, so this is what's going on. You know,
How would you have handled it?
How do you think you would handle it? I want to hear some advice before I make a decision, which I thought was kind of cool. The thing that was really weird to me is Nixon was like directly involved in politics all the way up till when he died during Clinton's era. Like after the impeachment, after all the disgrace and everything, presidents were still coming to him because as far as policy was concerned, Nixon was probably about as good as you're going to find in the 20th century. As much as nobody wants to hear that, he was just corrupt as hell.
Well, yeah, and being that he was corrupt just meant that he had his fingers in a lot of. So there was a lot of information at his fingertips.
Right, exactly.
Because of how corrupt he was. And another thing that's interesting that you brought up about him about other presidents going to Nixon for counsel is it makes me think of when he had everything in his office taped.
Yeah.
Right? And everything. And most of his tapes are just him ranting about his opinions on shit.
Yeah.
And so it both does and doesn't surprise me that they would ask the most opinionated president of all time on what his opinion was on whatever.
So, as weird as that was, it's just like a little side. The other one that I was surprised ruffled a lot of feathers is Jimmy Carter. A lot of other presidents do not get along with him, but but like this guy went into other countries where they were trying to flip them to democracy for their first elections, and went around to voting polls to make sure that things weren't being corrupted. Like that is fucking hero work right
dedication.
there.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sorry, like
it's
no
more
other president would
legwork
do that.
than a lot of presidents put in, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and
not to mention like he's like 93 and builds houses for people. Like
when I think of people not liking Jimmy Carter, it's because Jimmy Carter, isn't he still alive?
Yeah.
Walking around shaking everybody's hand.
Yeah.
Like that's what his. I feel like it's probably like a vanity thing. It's like this dude is still kissing babies, even though he'll never be in politics ever again.
Right. He doesn't need to be.
So right, I think that's what. It wouldn't surprise me if that's the irritation. It's just
he's
that
probably
he's still kissing babies.
And he's probably the only one in recent memory that did as much after office, and more after office than he did in office.
Yeah.
Most other presidents just kind of fade away into the background.
It's the side of Nixon.
Yeah, well, yeah. But he was still in the background. We didn't see him. He was just, they were going to pack channels for him. But yeah, so anyway, sorry, we got off on a tangent there.
Yeah,
but it was political, so...
It was definitely political. All right, and so, of course, I figured since we went over Borat, we would go to Sacha Baron Cohen's Twitter feed and pick a tweet to do a get-to-the-point review on.
Okay, I'm just doing this.
So,
doing this from the top of the head.
Pretty sure I follow Sacha Baron Cohen.
Why would you not?
Why wouldn't I? Okay, so what we have here is his most recent tweet, or at least the one that's pinned. Says, "Hey at Google, at YouTube, at Sundra Pichai."
He's just the CEO of Google,
yeah, and the CEO of YouTube.
Okay.
Seems like you're struggling. Virtually every other social media company has removed Donald Trump, but you might let him back on. I wrote a statement for you. Feel free to use. This is not hard. Ban Trump, save democracy. This, okay. I
wonder what his political affiliation is.
It's yeah, no, I wonder.
No, I'm just kidding.
But this to me is a perfect example of cancel culture in effect. I love Sacha Baron Cohen. I love that he's passionate. I love that he's charismatic and that he's not afraid to stand for what he believes in. We need more of that. But at the same time, ban Trump, save democracy. I am open for YouTube to be filled with whatever the hell people want it to be filled with. And if people want to see Donald Trump make an ass of himself, they should be entitled to do that. So don't ban Donald Trump.
Right.
We already have every single time someone makes a video that has anything to do with COVID or whatever, they stamp it with, this may or may not be accurate information.
Right.
Please see
Just
the
do that-
World
just
Health
do that with
Organization. Do that with Trump.
Which I think, at least Twitter
does.
tried doing things like that before. It was just like, no, they're not listening. He's inciting violence, all this other shit. So they're like, we won't put him up there anymore. I agree with you on freedom of speech, but it's like we talked about earlier about that doesn't mean you're free from consequences, right?
Right.
I do think it's a very specific case in the fact that he did try to incite a rebellion against this country.
This is my thing, though, that
I see what you're saying. I don't disagree with you. I just think it's a gray ground.
Yeah.
I don't blame Google and YouTube or whatever for not taking him off. At the same time, though, I don't know. It's hard. It's a slippery slope. You can't just start censoring one person because then it's easier to censor the next.
I just feel like censoring stupidity doesn't make it go away.
No, not at all. But I do think that if people stop hearing him, they'll stop believing him.
Right, but stupid people that are finding Trump to latch onto, they're just going to find something else stupid to latch onto.
I get it. No, I totally get it.
Why delay the inevitable? That's my thing. It's like they're going to expose themselves. Let them do it. There's plenty of people who, with the Capitol riots and protests, I am among them, that are just disgusted with the people who decided to be sore losers and storm the Capitol because they lost the vote.
Yeah.
And so, we've got all these sore losers for democracy. I can't stand it. So, like, have them out in the open. Let them face the consequences of their actions.
Right. I do think there's also the point of, yeah, you can blame Trump stirring the pot, but at the same time, these adults, mostly adults, made their decision, and they decided that following some reality TV star is more important than our nation's democracy.
Yeah,
and I get it. Like, they all, like, and the problem is they all legitimately think, because of Trump and his allies, that this election was somehow stolen, and that the Democrats, like, drink children's blood and, you know, sell them over Wish or whatever the site is, you know, like, but they disguise them as cabinets and shit. Like, I like the conspiracy theories, like, and I read a really long thing, I'm not going to get into it, about like why so many people buy into conspiracy theories, and there's a lot of different reasons for it. I don't blame anybody for being duped. I think that we're just at a point in our country, or at least how we act as citizens, and elected officials, where when we do something wrong, we don't want to admit it. We double down when we get called out.
Right. That was Nolan. He didn't know what's going on.
It's fine.
Okay.
I was just stopping because he was making noise, so...
Yeah, no, it's fine. Okay. Yeah, no, and I agree with you on that. And, like, yeah, again, my whole point is just that there's no point in
You're right.
I feel like it makes us too much like China to hide our atrociousness.
Right. It's an empty gesture at that, because, like you said, even if you do block Donald Trump or whatever, like, silence his voice, there are just going to be people who are going to say equally stupid shit that Trump followers are going to be behind.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, he's not the first guy that these conspiracy theorists have been around at least since the moon landing, right? So it's
right.
Like, at
if
least
not
as far
before,
as yeah, probably before, but that's as far as, like, I can remember any big event being questioned. But so they're gonna latch onto things, and they're gonna talk about how, like, 9/11 was impossible unless it was an inside job, and just and the Earth is flat, which is just
the Earth is flat. Yeah,
it's so exhausting.
The guy who only went up 1,800 feet on his rocket to see if the Earth is flat. Oh boy. So, and in conclusion, if geek is the new chic, shouldn't that flow into your coffee drinking game as well? The selection of vintage, geeky, and cheeky mugs can be found on eBay, fulfilling occasions from fool to cool. To see our selection of mugs, click on the link in the description below to aid in an expressive drinking experience.
And if you didn't know, Kelly and I shot a movie a few years back called The Here and Now. Formerly offered on Amazon Prime, it is now exclusively located on the Fourth Wall Players Patreon page, as well as merchandise and behind-the-scenes content. Become a patron today at patreon.com/fourthwallplayers. That's patreon.com/4thwallplayers, all one word.
And thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
When I believe we are preparing for our sitcom, our top 5 will they, won't they couples.
Oh, yes, that's the Wonder
Woman.
Woman. Okay, that's the Wonder Woman 84.
As well as Wonder Woman 1984. So see you all later. Peace.
Peace.
Get to the point.